Hi. So I guess everyone on WoW Reddit hates me, and I guess I feel like making content today. So I'll make some more content. Um so yeah, I don't know. I put my video out about how I don't like the one button rotation. And I kind of figured there would be like a good chunk of people who were like, "It's accessibility, screw you, you hate accessibility." Like I definitely like I knew that was gonna happen, but there was so much more of that than I expected. And then what I really didn't expect was the amount of comments that were like, "You're just mad because you suck so much that you're worried. You're worried you're gonna get out DPS'd by this." And it's like, man, I just don't feel like I said any of those things. I don't feel like that's at all what I said. So let's look at these though, and we'll just kind of talk about some of this because like I don't know. So yeah, this guy, so this is the one, and this is like the most I've ever had. Like I have a decent amount of Reddit karma and post karma from years of posting stupid things on a silly website. And I feel like I have like a pretty good handle typically when I like post stuff about like, you know, where it's going to end up. But this is like I think one of the most downvoted pieces of content I've like ever made, possibly. So this guy's like, "Oh, getting a feeling only content creators hate this." And like, let me just say, it feels really good to be referred to as a content creator again, because I haven't made anything relevant in probably a decade. And the only subscribers I really have on my YouTube channel are from when I used to make relevant content. So thank you. Thank you, Mechlinizer. And like, this is a true sentence. This is like a true statement, but like, I don't feel like that's what I was doing. I will admit that I made a clickbaity title and a clickbaity thumbnail. But that's kind of just how YouTube is anymore. So I don't know. I don't feel like my content was clickbaity. I feel like I was... I mean, you could disagree with me, but I don't feel like I was being hateful. I don't feel like I was at any point hateful. I was concerned. I was sad. I still am those things. And I disagree with this, but I don't feel like I was hateful. I always found personally, though, that I got a lot more views when I was happy and cheerful, or when I was raging, like at something I had done when I was doing a content creation. So, but I do know this works for some people, but I don't think that's what I was doing. There are a few comments that I was like, damn, a couple people actually get it. So, you know, there's a little hope. Like this guy saying, you know, if players feel so overwhelmed by class gameplay that they choose to opt out entirely with the one-button rotation, maybe that is a symptom of a larger problem with class design in current WoW. Why is it that instead of reducing spec complexity and removing talent tree bloat, Blizzard chose to add a way to remove gameplay from the game? Who is actually benefiting from this or finds it fun? So yeah. And then I feel like what happens is, like, before I can even like speak, there are certain people who, like, if they're even at this point in the video, they probably aren't, but before you can even like finish the thought, they're like, the people benefiting from it are people who have accessibility problems, blah. And it's like, yeah, okay, yes, but I don't think it's good for them either. I think it's kind of demeaning to people who have accessibility issues to say that they need a one-button solution because of their disabilities. I used to play fighting games. That's where all of my original YouTube channel stuff happened. Do you guys know a player named Broly Legs? Rest in peace, Broly Legs, former Smasher and fighting game player, tragically passed away a few years ago. Met him at several tournaments, great guy. This guy, I'm going to just pop this little video up here. He has a severe disability. And he plays fighting games with his tongue. Check out this video on the Street Fighter channel if you haven't seen it before. I have personally lost to this man. I was a pretty decent Street Fighter player and a pretty decent Smash player. I have personally lost to this man, literally comboing me to death with his tongue on an Xbox controller. So I think it's demeaning to people with disabilities to say that what they need is a one-button solution. And I also think that it takes as much away from the game for them as it does for anybody else. There are ways that you could approach people who have disabilities, having better accessibility, that would not discourage actually playing the game. But I don't know how else to say it, and I don't know how people can interpret it any other way. But like it, in my opinion, it is self-evident that reducing the gameplay down to repeatedly pressing a single button is damaging to like the soul of the gameplay, to what it is that makes the gameplay interesting. I don't understand how anybody could find that to be a sentence that means that I hate accessibility. Would Broly Legs have been better served by having a controller that was specially made for him that he could have, interacted with better? Yeah, absolutely. That's accessibility. But I mean, also, I don't know. Dude was a really good player, and he played with his face. So like, there's something to be said about, like, you want obviously as much accessibility as you can have, but I don't think anyone would agree that changing the game Smash or Street Fighter in a way that incentivized people to play in a less interactive fashion is a slam dunk for accessibility, because that's making the game worse, and it's really not a great way to do accessibility either, because like, are you anyone really playing the game at that point? I don't know. And so then, like, that's kind of like though what people say. It's like, oh, it's for players with hand disabilities. Players who just want to adventure around the world and aren't particularly interested in the gameplay of combat. So these are two separate sentences. And these could be two different players, or they could be the same player. So a player with hand disabilities is definitely someone who we would want to support. But that kind of accessibility within WoW is like support for alternative controllers. Like, I know some people who play with foot pedals, some because they just prefer them, some because they have hand disabilities. People who use, like they'll use the Naga mouse. Maybe they have a disability with one of their hands and having more buttons on their mouse as opposed to their keyboard, or vice versa. Some people who have special keyboard pads they play with. And again, these are all people who may just do it for their personal preference, or they may do it because they personally have disabilities. But then separately, like players who just want to adventure around the world and aren't particularly interested in the gameplay of combat. I also think this is totally valid. I don't think a one-button solution is what I would do for these people, but if you were going to do a one-button solution, making it so competitively non-viable would have no effect on people who are killing monsters in the world. Because 90% of the monsters you just run around in the world and kill, or doing Raid Finder, or doing normal dungeons, or whatever, they don't have enough health to where that 50% damage reduction would matter. But if it's close enough in competitive content, it will incentivize players who want the challenge to use it. You're seeing this as a landlord building a wheelchair ramp and going, this project is a waste of time. No, this is not what is being said. This is, and here's the difference in this too, because like I think the comparison to real world accessibility ramps or handicap parking spaces, I think is like at worst it's a bad faith argument, and at best it's a total misunderstanding of the differences between the real world and video games. And I'm not trying to be a turd bucket, but like some people I really do think don't understand like game theory and how things can be incentivized in a game in ways that they can't in the real world. So like in real life, when you play the sport basketball, there's a rule that says you're not allowed to dribble, right? Or sorry, you have to dribble. You're not allowed to, what do they even call it? Maybe I picked a bad example. Walking? You're not allowed to walk. Yeah, walking. I haven't played basketball in a very long time. You have to dribble. And so you have to dribble, but there has to be like a ref there to enforce that. And there is, right? But in a basketball video game, like the game just makes you dribble. And if the game stops making your character dribble in a certain way, you could still play the game and nothing would happen. Like maybe you get a bug and the way your character's dribbling doesn't work. You know, this is called emergent gameplay, right? Like something different happens and your character's not dribbling, but the game like doesn't notice it, so you can just go do whatever you want. Games can incentivize things in a way that like in real life, someone would be like, oh, clearly you're not dribbling, right? But that can also be kind of cool, right? You can get cool emergent gameplay. But you see this all the time in different games. And to give like a WoW example of like game incentives, think about like how many times in World of Warcraft there have been instances where there's like one dungeon in like the Mythic Plus dungeon pool that's like really short and it's really easy, and how 95% of the player base will subject themselves to just soul-crushing levels of monotony and boredom and frustration, just doing anything they can to repeatedly rerun the Maw of Souls or Shadow Moon Burial Ground or whatever dungeon. Nobody would agree that when Blizzard made those dungeons, that they like intentionally wanted players to do that. And most players would say, when you look at those dungeons, well, that's up to you if that's what you want to do. But at the end of the day, Blizzard has always come back around and had to admit, like, well, because this dungeon was this way, it incentivized this, and, you know, we need to change the incentives, because what the incentives are, and they're not always intended, and I don't think they're intended with this change in this way, but I do think what it incentivizes will have this negative effect, and, like, that is my concern. It's not that it's not that they're building a wheelchair ramp, and it's not that building a wheelchair ramp is a waste of time. It's that in a video game landscape, you could foreseeably build a wheelchair ramp, unintentionally, though it may be, in a way that will encourage everyone, incentivize everyone to always use it. In real life, you would just say, hey, get off that wheelchair ramp. You know, people are trying to use it for their wheelchair. Well, that's a whole other thing, because sometimes people do use wheelchair ramps. They skateboard on them. That's a whole thing. But generally, you know, most people don't park in a handicapped parking spot. But like in a game where it's incentivizing this, there's no like card that you pick in World of Warcraft that says like I have these disabilities and I qualify for these. It's just a feature you can turn on. And so because you can turn on this feature, and because this feature does do, in my opinion, and in quite a few people outside of these threads' opinions, does do too close to competitive damage, it will incentivize people who don't want to use it to use it. That is the crux of the issue. Not that I'm mad that they made an accessibility feature, but that accessibility feature diminishes the meaningfulness of gameplay, and even worse, it incentivizes people who don't want to use it, potentially, to use it. Yeah. This is kind of more of the same stuff. Yeah, why not have a one-button heal and a one-button threat? I mean, I agree with all this as well. My skill expression. That's not what I'm saying. I do think it diminishes skill expression, but it's not a personal mine. Like, I'm not. That's not what I'm doing. I don't know how you could look at this and not see that it will have a potential for diminished skill expression across the game. I really don't. I think you just don't understand incentives, if that's your take. I don't know how else to put that. I don't understand this at all. Like, it's been a thing. It's just an option for people to use. It's been a thing with add-ons forever. No, it hasn't. There have not been one-button rotation add-ons forever. There have been times in WoW's history where there have been, but they usually get squashed. There has been Hekili, but rotation assist is really, really good. I like that Blizzard is putting in a rotation assist. I think that's an awesome feature. I'm super for that, because the rotation assist actually teaches you how to play the game. A one-button macro does not teach you anything. It teaches you nothing. It trains you to not learn how to play the game. I don't know. I don't feel like I was losing my mind, but fair enough. There are a lot of people who are more more exploding, but I do think it's bad. I think it's bad, and it makes me sad, and I do think it might diminish my enjoyment of the game, and it might make me quit the game. But I don't know. Losing my mind? No. I just think it's bad. This isn't bad for WoW. You can argue about tuning, but it being there in itself isn't bad. And then I just get downvoted again. I don't know how people disagree with this. If it is bad, like, I don't know what else to say other than what I said. It's amazing to me. Like, and then this guy says, like, okay, so after I'm like, hey, you know, even if we're tuned lower, it'd still be bad, because I think it's bad to play the game with one button. I'm sorry, I think that's bad. You know, and yeah, it's like an aimbot, which it is. And then he's like, no, it's not. Aimbots are bad because they're cheating. Well, okay. a one button add-on was cheating in World of Warcraft until Blizzard officially made one. They banned people for one button things. That's a thing. So it's just that now they have sanctioned the cheating and called it the one button, whatever they call it. And they actually harm the player it is used against. Well, yeah, this harms the players who want to play the game and they want to do their rotation. But it could potentially be very effective for them to not do their rotation. It's not, and this is where people jump off again. It's like, well, you're just not good enough. That only affects you. I think you're severely underestimating the people who this will affect. Most people, when they do a heroic raid or when they do a Mythic Plus dungeon, especially when they're on a prog, they're not getting purple parses. Even good players, they're getting like blue parses at best. A lot of times green, sometimes gray, because it depends. It depends on your knowledge and awareness relative to your ability to do your rotation. And part of fight mastery is that the more you get used to the way a fight is, the less you need to spend your mental stack on paying attention to the fight, and the more you can spend your mental stack on paying attention to your rotation. But that continuum is exactly what interests me about the video game World of Warcraft. That push and pull of how much can I afford to not pay attention to the mechanics to maximize my damage, or how much can I afford to pay attention to the mechanics so I don't die while still trying to maximize my damage. That is an interesting mechanic. And if you don't think mashing one button repeatedly diminishes that interaction, I think you're making a bad faith argument, or you're just not paying attention. OBR doesn't do that. I wouldn't use it because I don't enjoy it. That's fine, but unless you're literally a player in the top 1%, which a lot of people think they are, but they're not. Sorry, not even one. Sorry, I'm in the top 1%. I am literally a top 1% Mythic Plus player. Literally. I have been repeatedly. I have never been a top 0.1% Mythic Plus player, which is title. Unless you're in that top 0.1, there is a very real chance, and it becomes increasingly high the lower down you go. So like, but I think even for players in the top 1%, players who do 16s, 17s, 18s, I think there is a very real possibility that you could be incentivized to use this. I don't think there's a guarantee, but I think as you go down, a player in a 12 who's doing their weekly 12s, and especially if they're new, I think you are heavily incentivized to use this, and I think that makes the game less fun. However much fun you have doing good damage, pressing one button and not thinking, it will have a shelf life that is shorter than the amount of fun that you would have if you actually interacted with these really cool game systems that I like, that they put in the game, that are neat. This is so stupid. My one arm, my one hand, and my one middle finger are raised to you assholes who are fighting the one button. I don't feel like a system that incentivizes bad gameplay and that doesn't affect accessibility particularly well. I don't feel like being negative to that means that I have a problem with people who need accessibility features. I don't know how else to put that. It's just like this is the kind of things people just jump to. It's like I don't think you with one arm, if that's your disability, if you have one arm, I don't think you will get good, interesting gameplay out of pressing one button. And I don't think you, as a one-armed player, need a one-button solution. You probably do need a different mouse or keyboard or input device, and you might need certain software macros to be built into the game that might help with certain things. That's iffier. But there are lots of things you can do to support accessibility that aren't turning all of the gameplay into pressing one button over and over and over again. There's a lot of these like this. Here's one that I liked. I think the one-button solution shows that WoW is probably a game that is a bit too complicated for most people. Totally agree. Totally agree. Now, if that's a good or bad thing depends on the player. I don't know. I think at that point I drop off a bit because I think you could say, like, bar none, the game is too complicated, especially at the floor level. I've heard a lot of people say the ceiling in WoW is too high. I actually don't agree with that. When I compare WoW to, like, other difficult competitive games I've played, fighting games for me especially, I think the ceiling in WoW is pretty low on the spectrum of competition. I mean, that said, it's big enough that there are people, again, in the 0.1% that are way, way better than me. You know, the kind of people who are timing 20s are hugely better than people who are timing even 16s or 17s. But that's still a pretty small ceiling, like, right? It's not like a big ceiling to me would be if there were 2 or 3 other camps below that 0.1%, like if it were shifted down and there were like people who could do 20s, and then there were also people who could do 25s, and there were also people who could do 30s. Meanwhile, the rest of the community can only do like 14s. That would be like too high of a ceiling. But I actually think the ceiling in WoW is pretty good. I think the problem with WoW is the floor. The barrier to entry in WoW is so hard for new players. So I am all for making it easier for new players in ways that aren't dumbing the game down into pressing one button over and over and over again. Yeah, this is an Olympics comparison, which I totally agree with. We have different categories of Olympics for people who are disabled. Totally makes sense. We have already in real life had issues with people who are disabled. This is a real life thing. I'm not making it up. Like, people who have certain disabilities with their legs, you can get prosthetic legs that are objectively better than real legs. So, like, obviously we don't want to incentivize real people to get that implant. And we also don't want to not give people with prosthetic legs an avenue to compete. It's a difficult thing to solve, but I think everyone would agree that at the end of the day, like, if there was an incentive, and there was, to encourage people who don't need those assistive things to use them anyway, if that's an incentive, that's pretty universally considered bad. And I think we're very close to, if not probably already in the spot where that is what this incentive is doing. This incentive is incentivizing people who don't strictly need it to use it. That's bad. I do think this impacts everybody. Yeah, this guy's like, no self-promo. Hats off to this mod, by the way. Because, like, this is totally, like, making a post of your own video is totally normal. So, hats off to him. Yeah, what incentivizes players to use this? So, I'm not competing for a high parse. I'm playing the game to complete challenging content and have fun while doing it. I know. I'm not competing for a parse either. It's fun to see a parse number. It is fun to see a parse number. But, like, this is exactly the kind of person who this is potentially problematic for. Because there will be times when you're competing to have a bit of a challenge, but also have fun, which is, frankly, you know, I'm sure everybody's on a bit of a different continuum with this, but that, I consider myself a casual hardcore player, right? I'm on the casual side of more serious play. There are people who play the game way more seriously than I do. But as you get into the more casual elements, even like the like casual, lightly competitive, or even just playing casual, these are the people who, like, you're not going to want to spend the time to learn your rotation as well. And so if it means you having to sit down and, I don't know, actually have to play the game and learn it, versus just literally clicking a button and instantly doing 80% of the damage that is possible to be done by someone who does put hours in, you're gonna be pressing this one button, dude. And at that point, if you think that's still gonna be fun, I guess we have to agree to disagree. Because I don't think it will be. And yeah, we are incentivized. We are. It's for dumpster alts who I play more because of this. Use it or don't. See, this is what I don't get about the use it or don't people. It's like oh, there are bombs in the world. Oh my, I gotta get out of here, guys. Hang on. Let's go to the top of this tower. I don't know what those bombs were. I missed it. Skill check. Anyway. I don't understand the... If you enjoy it, do it. If you don't. It's like they completely miss the incentive game theory part of this. Again, I'll go back to the dungeons. Well, if you don't enjoy repeatedly running Shadow Moon Burial Grounds over and over and over again, just don't do it. Well, yeah, okay, but the problem is, if I don't repeatedly run Shadow Moon Burial Grounds over and over and over again, I will get less game resource and less loot than the people who do. So, yes, I can make that choice. And I, in fact, did often make that choice. But it is a feel-bad moment when you are being incentivized to do something that you actively are not interested in. So, that is my point, is that it is the incentive. And the incentive is there because the damage is too high. That's why the damage has to be low. If it isn't, there will be an incentive to use it. Downvoted. All right, you too, bud. What? Why? I don't. I can't imagine these people actually like heard anything that I said. Right? They had to have just like read the title and had this reaction, which, in fairness, I suppose is what I get for doing a clickbaity title. I don't know how people make them work. I've never liked them. I've started to try to use them on some videos because it's like what people do, but I guess I shouldn't do that. I should just not make clickbaity titles and continue to have, 2 people watch my videos, I guess, and not care too much. I don't know. Making the GC reduction to the one button rotation more effective and unable to be top DPS while allowing players a chance to see some of it. No, I don't get this. And maybe this is where I will be less amicably received. I don't think you deserve to do cutting edge content on a one button rotation. I don't think you deserve to be competitive in a plus, I don't know, even a plus 12, maybe a plus 14 with a one button rotation. We have Raid Finder, we have Story Mode, we have Delves. There is so much content for people who want to be casual. Do that content. Do that content. And do that content with a one button rotation that does 50% tops damage. Because you won't notice. Because you don't need that damage in that content. Why do we need to incentivize people who want the challenge to use this? We don't. And if you want to do cutting edge or high level M+, there is something better for you to do than a one button rotation. Bait used to be believable. I'm not baiting. This is a real thing. I don't know. It will allow more people to experience more content in the game. It doesn't affect actual competitive play. Yes, it does. I think you're taking them at their word. Okay, yeah. This is the problem. I think some people are taking Blizzard at their word that this GCD penalty is in fact enough to disincentivize the use of it. That's where our differences lie. I don't believe that it is. And I think if you looked into it, there's a really cool video this guy just put out. I don't know if you saw it, where he compares it. I think if you looked into it, you would probably agree that it is not very much less damage. And that's why it, in fact, is going to affect actual competitive play. I think it very realistically could affect World First. There's a comment in this or the other thread where somebody's talking about how, like, on the first 20 or so polls, of even in Mythic Rating, it would be honestly fine to tell everybody to just use the one button rotation for the first 20 polls while we learn the fight. I think that's gross. I don't like that. I think that removes nuance and interesting gameplay from the game. And I think that's a bad thing, and I don't think it's crazy to think that. And I don't think that anybody is actually hearing that. I feel like they're just hearing that you're mad about there being inaccessibility. I don't get it. I literally think you could get an N plus title with this. It's definitely on the fringe. But I definitely think you could get title with 1-button rotation. You definitely could. I have 100% confidence that it could be done. I do think that is outside of where we're talking, right? Like at that level, you're certainly going to be pushed away further from it, but you don't have to go too much lower than title range. And I think it's a very real possibility. Even in the top 10% of play, I think the top 10% of players free will be incentivized to do this. I'm a top 1%-ish player, and I think even I will be a little bit incentivized to use this. I don't want to. Maybe I won't just because I don't, but it's an icky feel. Icky feel. This is just fake. I don't know what he's talking about. And so then I mentioned the Ret APL, and I feel like people also just like don't get this. Like maybe they think that because I'm a Ret Paladin, it's like they just hear that I'm a Ret Paladin, and they assume that like, oh, I'm Ret Paladin, and I should do good because like, you know, Ret's easy. Ret's the easiest class in the game. Second easiest class in the game at worst, probably. Top 3. Ret is a top 3 easiest class in the game. I would say it's probably the easiest class in the entire game to play. I think more specs should be like Ret. I think more specs should be easier. I am pro the game getting easier. But that has no bearing on what I'm saying here. Ret's APL is written well. It goes well with the design of the class. Not just because it's easy, but because of the way it interacts with its cooldowns. And so because they've designed the APL, well, APL, I don't know if you know, it's action priority list. It's just what determines what happens when you press that button. They did a pretty good job with it. And in doing a pretty good job, it does a pretty good amount of damage. And here we are. So yeah, I did get like a couple little upvotes when people asked me to explain things, which is good. I really appreciated this guy's comment. Because he clearly actually like read and watched, and you know, he likes it. He doesn't mind the 1-button rotation, but then he agrees, or they agree, excuse me, that making the class rotation easier to execute and removing bloat would be a way better fix. Yeah, it would. The problem is when you implement something like this, it's very hard to take it back, and I don't think we're ever going to get rid of it now. So, but if you don't think that it would have been better to do almost anything other than this, I don't know, man. Like, do you like cookie clicker games? Do you like those cookie clickers where you just tap the button? I mean, if you do, go. That's fine. Good for you. There's 100 cookie clicker games. You could go get them on the iTunes store. I don't think it's okay to turn World of Warcraft into a cookie clicker game. I don't like that. That's bad. Anyway, that's most of them in the WoW thread. I was actually surprised in the competitive WoW thread that I also posted this in. I expected more negativity out of the WoW thread. I know everybody on the WoW thread thinks the competitive WoW subreddit is like super negative, but like I usually find it to be the opposite. But they both have their ups and downs. They both have like some really positive and negative stuff about them. But in the competitive WoW thread, there are way more people who were like thinking that like this kind of shit. Like, oh, if you're getting beat by a non-conditional, non-reactive, delayed macro, maybe competitive WoW is not for you. Have you tried it? I don't think you've tried it. Is this the same guy? No, they just have similar names. I don't think you tried it. I would bet a decent chunk of money that this person has not tried the 1-button macro. Or maybe they play a class that it's really bad for. There are a few. I hear Havoc is really bad for it, but I'm not sure. Most of them are fine from what I've seen, but I know there are a few that are really bad. But probably this person has never tried it. Because, first of all, I didn't say that. I mean, I literally beat it on my own thing. The point is, it's too close. And if it's at all close to what you can do on your own, it will be incentivized to be used, because game theory is a thing, which we've already gone over, so I won't repeat myself there. Yeah, I really agree with this guy. Bless up on this person. So, to this point, yeah, when the 1-button is beating players at key levels in the top 1%, it is probably overtuned. And to be clear, it isn't routinely doing this, but it has been done. I have seen videos of it being done where you're in an 18 or 19, you, the content creator, using the 1-button, and you do the best damage in the key with other people who are very good, who are timing an 18 with you, or 19. It has been done, period. If that can happen at all, which clearly it can, it is overtuned. It ever being true for any class in any situation at this level of gameplay is completely inappropriate, full stop. Go off, King. If it's ever the best at a 17, then it has already beaten 99% of the player base. Because if you've done 16s, 17s, whatever, I think maybe I'm around the 1.5% right now. I've been in the 0.8%. I don't know what I'm at. Maybe I'm at 1.2 right now. But yeah, I have resilient 16s, so I'm around the 1%. Literally, if it can do that, which it can, that is in the most literal sense, that is better than 99% of what the player base is doing now. I totally agree with this. This guy, I swear this isn't my Smurf account, you guys. I swear I didn't just like type this on my own. It should be tuned to beat 50% at most. 100% agree. 100%, because so many people, and like nobody remembers this because they look at their parses on Warcraft logs or whatever, and they're like, oh, I have all these purple and orange parses. All right, but like how many of your polls did you get purple and orange parses on? If you did a boss 100 times in a row, especially what were those first 5 attempts on that boss? I bet you they were green. Maybe if you're really good, they're blue. Maybe if you got lucky, they're purple. But when you first do that boss, it's going to be low, man. And like, when you get to that 99th percentile parse, that's after you've mastered it. The problem is, like, if this is set to parse at 85%, and it is, you're going to want to use that right away. Because you can skip all these gray parses, and all you have to do is pay attention to the mechanics while you mash one button. It is supposed to be an accessibility feature for casual players in low-level content. But, yeah, it's overtuned. It's overtuned. It isn't the best. Yeah, you're right, it isn't. But it's really close, and it takes no effort. You're mad at a problem that doesn't exist. This is just factually proven wrong many times. The numbers show it. People have done keys with it. They've done raid bosses with it. Now, will this definitely kill World of Warcraft in the way that I'm sad about? Probably not. But I think it'll have a really unfortunate, sad, detrimental effect on it that it will make some people quit. I might be one of them. Probably not. I love this game. But it'll make me sad, and I think it diminishes the truth of the gameplay. And I don't think I think it only fails. I don't think it even succeeds in what it intends to do. There is no scenario where one-button rotation should outperform anybody actively pressing their buttons in a semi-okay order. People aren't brain damaged, okay, in that level of keys. They have a decent grasp of their spec. Yeah, mistakes happen, but one-button rotation is automation, and it lowers cognitive load by a ridiculous amount. That paired up... Oh, this guy... Oh, yes, we upvote this guy. That paired up with a not very uneven penalty on a spec-by-spec basis. Yeah, that's also a problem with it. But with too low of a penalty in general leads to situations where you might be better off playing with 20 to 25% penalty and still do better than you usually do. Again, there's absolutely no scenario in which 75 to 80% of the player base should be outperformed by automation, period. That is literally what this is. When you look, like, and people look at this and they're like, oh, it makes you do 20 to 25% less damage. That's okay. You're literally saying, like I think people think in their heads when they look at like a sim, like they parse themselves or they sim themselves on raid bots. They'll look at the sim and they'll be like, "Oh, that's the damage I do." No, it isn't. I'm in the top 1% and I don't usually meet my sims. I don't know what percentage I'm at, but I know when I parse in raid, a lot of times I'll get a 97 or 98. Sometimes I get a 99. I've never gotten a 100, but I've gotten quite a few 99s. But then a lot of times in raid when I parse, especially early in prog, I don't even get purple until I've done the boss a couple times. Unless it's like a really simple boss, or I'm just like really vibing with that boss. But like eventually I get all purples and some oranges usually in my parses, but like most of the time I'm not. Most of the time I'm getting green. Sometimes I get gray. I'd say a lot of times I get blue. But then, you know, eventually as you master the fight, you get better parses. That's the game. But this is going to you can immediately do a purple parse with no thought. And it's like, well, you'll have to move around too. Well, yeah, you have to move around when you do your normal rotation. So if you can purple parse with no movement, how is that not a better thing to do if you're having to move? Like, you don't have to think at all. You just get a free purple parse. Purple parse, press the button, purple parse. That's crazy. I don't know how people don't agree with this. It's crazy to me. It's interesting that, man, there are a lot more positive threads in the CWoW subreddit, at least. There's a lot of negative ones, too, where people just complain at me, but, you know. It's interesting that almost all the one-button APLs have this issue with the CDs being pressed wrong, but once you fix that, you do within 10 to 15% of ideal, which is exactly what I did in my video on the third example. The third example, where I manually did my cooldowns and then just mashed it for my rotation. And that was a lot closer. The main issue I see is that especially in Mythic Prog, this must be the guy I referenced earlier. Yeah, it might be better to do one button and manual CDs than actually bother, because DPS is rarely the issue, unless you're in the top 50, which nobody is. That's the top 0.00001%. Even getting Hall of Fame, which is the top 200 people or whatever to kill the boss, the Mythic boss, it isn't an issue, right? When I review my players, I rarely look at how they're doing their DPS, right? The only times are rare mechanic skip opportunities. There are nuances in hard movement bosses, which one button might not understand. True. But then you could also just kind of like stop mashing it at a certain point and probably still not lose that much. But yeah. But otherwise, I think this will be a good prog tool, and I wouldn't be surprised if some raid leaders will ask people to do it for the first 20 pulls. This is the guy I referenced earlier. I think this is a real concern. I think that's bad. And like, if you're just like, oh, but let people have fun. It's not like I'm sitting here steaming like, oh, like if I lost to a one button presser, like I would be mad at what it meant about the game. I would not be mad at that person. I would honestly be like, damn, go off, King. Like I really need to fix my situation. Well, except that, maybe me losing to a one button parser in this scenario means that the one button parser gets a 75 and I get a 71. In that case, I'm like, I'm pretty okay with the 71. Like, it's not bad. Obviously, I'll get better, but, like, I wouldn't even be mad at all there. I'd just be like, yeah, you're just doing the parse, and I'm still learning this fight. But, like, that's dumb. Why are we playing the game? If there's no... Like, there was some post in the other thread, the guy was like, more skill expression, and it's like, that's not what I'm saying, but, I mean, I do also dislike the lack of skill expression. It's not my skill expression, though. It's not like... This isn't a personal, like, I'm not sitting here stewing mad. This is, like, me being sad about this, like, what the game is incentivizing. That's what makes me sad. And I think a loss of skill expression is a bad thing. Sometimes you can lose a little skill expression to get a little more accessibility, right? This is a continuum, too. Like, you want the game to be as easy as possible so as many people who can play it as possible. But then you also want the game to be as deep as possible to keep people engaged. And that's always something that you got to fight with. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is one of my favorite fighting games. I think that is the deepest game I've ever played with the lowest skill floor imaginable. So I've played way deeper games. It's not on its own the deepest game I've ever played. It's the deepest relative to how low the floor is. Smash Ultimate is so deep considering how insanely easy it is to pick up. I have never played a game, probably ever, in any genre, not even just fighting games, that was as easy to pick up as Smash Ultimate is relative to how deep that game is. Chef's kiss. And I personally want that kind of thing for every game. I think I want as much depth as I can get, but as low a floor as I can get. And for some games, they're more about a higher floor, right? That's kind of like who they cater to. And that's okay. I don't think WoW should be that game. I don't think WoW should be a game where it raises the floor and the ceiling. I think WoW already has, as I said earlier, a pretty low ceiling. But I think the floor is also too high. WoW is a game like this, and it should be a game where the floor is lower, right? The ceiling could be higher in other games, but WoW shouldn't have a high ceiling. It should be like an average ceiling, and I think it does. It average high maybe, but like I don't think the ceiling in WoW is all that high compared to most other competitive games. But the floor in WoW is way higher than some games that have a way higher ceiling. Like it's way easier to pick up like Counter-Strike, which is a way harder game, but like the basics, like, oh, I pick up gun, I turn, I click, I shoot. Way easier. WoW's like, configure these 47 action buttons and read 100 tooltips. Like, nobody's doing that. So, like, they need to make the game easier, This guy linked the Tettles video, and which is one where he does a 17 as a boomkin and tops damage on it. They have a discussion about that. So, like, this I don't get at all. I believe that's as a boomkin. Okay, I mean, boomkin is, I guess, they're fairly easy to play. They're not red or BM, but they're easy. They're not like crazy easy, but they're easy. But then like still properly managing his cooldowns. Yeah, but he's smashing one button. I mean, the nuances in the cooldowns. I don't think it's a saving grace that you can choose to manually do your cooldowns. I don't think that solves the core issue of invalidating your rotation being a bad thing. Invalidating your rotation still means that you're losing a lot of depth of gameplay. So, like, if you could say, like, well, we're going to invalidate all rotations, but you can still choose to when to use your cooldowns. Like, okay, I mean, that is agency. Yeah, and there will be skill expression in when you use those cooldowns. And that's a good thing. But I think having some skill expression in the rotation is a good thing, too. I think there should be less skill expression in rotations than there is presently. I think all rotations should be easier. I don't think all rotations should be one button, and I don't think there should be an option to make rotations one button for anyone. People pressing buttons suboptimally are losing to the one-button people, and I don't really think that's a bad thing. Depends on how suboptimal. I think if you're doing 75% optimal gameplay and you lose to this, which is very much a possibility, I don't think that's okay. I think if you're in the top 75% of players, you should never lose to this under any circumstance. I think if you're in the top 50% of players, if you are a 51% percentile player, 51%, I literally think you should never lose to a one-button mash. Ever. I don't think that's a crazy thought. I think a lot of people don't realize like what a top 60% player even is. I have some players in my guild who are probably low 70, high 60 percentile players. And they have friends who are like fully casual, and they're like gods to them. They're like gods. Well, those players are going to lose to this one button. The one button will be better than what they're doing in some areas. Anyway, that's bad. Your ego should not be so tied to this that you're concerned with someone pressing one button at an optimized pace will be able to perform you. It isn't about me at all. I don't know how else to put it. I think these people just don't believe me. They think that I'm like in my room raging personally that my skill expression, but it's not. It's the whole game. It's the whole game's skill expression. That's sad. At least I got upvoted on this. That made me feel good. People heard what I said. You know? People heard what I said. So that's a good thing. It certainly is an issue if it becomes mainstream for decent good players in dungeons or raid encounters with a lot of mechanics to handle on the side. Yes, that is exactly my concern. I don't think that's the case at the moment, but I'm not sure. That's fair. I think at this point we're both kind of making different guesses, but to me, looking at the way these numbers are and knowing what I know about mechanics and how they can hold back the ability to do damage, I personally don't see any other way for this to go. I also think it's a bad way for beginners to learn the game. It absolutely is. It literally doesn't teach them anything. I don't understand how you could think that this will teach anyone anything. It is repeatedly pressing one button forever. How is that going to teach anybody anything? I just don't get it. I can already see how you will get more rage in party chat for not just using the one button macro instead of, quote, sacrificing the party member's time or a key for you to learn the rotation properly. Yeah, this is a huge concern. WoW already has a significant problem with toxicity being levied towards players who are new and learning. And this is absolutely going to be a thing where there are going to be people in a key who don't know what they're doing, and the party members are going to get toxic, and they're going to be like, bro, just turn on one button. Bro, one button or I leave. One button or I leave. Turn it on. I'm not dealing with you. Turn on one button. That's definitely going to happen. And that might get that person into more keys for a little while, but it will actively be detrimental to their ability to learn how to actually play the game. Very sad. It's not for you, little gup. I mean, I know, that's not my complaint. It's not that my complaint is not that they're building the proverbial wheelchair ramp, and I think it's a waste of time. My complaint is that the way they're building the wheelchair ramp is going to incentivize people who don't need it to use it. That's my point. 683 Mythic Gear complaining about a function that has a clear design and was explicitly advertised as such for casual content players. This is just people not understanding the incentives. You are taking Blizzard at face value. Blizzard says, we are going to make a system that is for accessibility and for casual players. That's fine, but they didn't hit their mark. That's the problem. They didn't hit their mark. They went past it, and that has repercussions. It does. I don't know how what is being heard when I speak of this is just that I am mad that an accessibility exists. It's wild. Rep players loving they can outperform the majority of players pressing 3 to 4 buttons. Also rep players hate that other rep players outperform them by pressing 1. This is actually a fucking funny ass comment. Oh man. The guy himself. No, it's not a me thing, dude. There's nothing competitive about the one button rotation. Why is this here? The whole point was that there is, in fact, that they have, in fact, missed the mark. I feel like if these kinds of comments, if they had indicated to me that they actually understood what I was saying, we would be able to have an interesting conversation about whether we agree or disagree that it, in fact, does that. But they're just at point blank saying Blizzard said this is a casual option. It clearly is. They clearly haven't researched it. They clearly haven't tried it themselves. I think anybody in their right mind who tried this on their own would be at least a little bit scared of it. If you take nothing else away from this 50-minute ramble that I've gone on, try this on your character and tell me what you think. Sound off in the comments. How did it work for your character? I'm doing the clickbait thing again. How did it work for your character? How was your damage? Leave me a like, comment, and subscribe about how it did your, I don't know, YouTube algorithm things. This video is an insane self-report. That's a good one to end on. I don't agree. Sorry, man. You post a thing like this and people are just like, you're bad. Like, I am objectively not bad. Now, there are a lot of players who are a lot better than me. A lot. But in the spectrum of WoW, not a lot. Very few. I am literally better than like 6 million people. Maybe more. There are probably thousands of players who are better than me. Probably 5,000. Probably less. This is not a flex. It's just where I'm at on that spectrum. And I just think it's crazy to me for somebody to look at a post that brings up a concern and they just dismiss it as like, I'm just worried that I'm going to get out damaged. Bro, I play Ret. Like, I'm not... I'm clearly not severely concerned with maximal skill, or I wouldn't play a Ret Paladin. But I am good. And this is not me self-reporting that I'm bad and worried. So, anyway, I hope all 2 of you who watched this had some fun going through these comments with me. I don't really know why I made this video. I just kind of felt like blabbing. And enjoy the content. If you don't, downvote me like all these guys did. See ya.